He's okay with yellow color. And it matches well with green.
Our celebrants, thank you so much for the rich menu of spiritual nourishment in memory of our fallen brother. The National Vice Chairman, Alhaji Moses Kigongo, and the members of the Central Executive Committee of the National Resistance Movement, members of Parliament, the Secretariat headed by the Right Honorable Richard Todwong, friends, mourners. I am Nobert Mao, and I've known Jacob Oulanyah since 1988. Friends are relatives you choose. If we are honest, there are some of our brothers and sisters we would wish were born in another family. But we get to choose friends. And when you choose friends, they become your relatives. To that extent, Jacob became my relative. My speech is going to be in two parts. First is to share with you our relationship from the time we were young, and then I'll talk about his legacy. The purpose of my speech is to ensure that Jacob's life, the meaning of Jacob's life should not be lost, and the meaning of Jacob's death should also not be lost. Both life and death must have meaning. When I got the phone call from the Secretary General of the NRM, I accepted without hesitation. In a country which is polarized, where tectonic plates of political interests are moving in all directions, my coming here was even misunderstood by some of my colleagues in the party I lead. And I'm glad that the DP delegation is strong. Our Secretary General is here, the man, Dr. Gerard Siranda, who we want to send to Iala with your support. One of them called me. I have seen a flyer of you. You are going to NRM Secretariat. How will we defend you? The other day you were seated on a yellow vehicle. And then we saw you wearing a yellow shirt on the front line. Now, to make matters worse, you are now going to the headquarters of the junta. I am just telling you because these are conversations that we must have and we must take them on head on. I even got a call from somebody we went to school with, and he said, from green to yellow? Are you sure? My answer was simple. If Jacob were to be alive as Speaker and Vice Chairman of NRM representing Northern Uganda, and Nobert Mao were to be lying dead somewhere in a coffin, and the DP were to hold a memorial service at DP headquarters, Jacob would not have hesitated to go and eulogize me at DP headquarters. After that, the debate collapsed. The Secretary General has talked about Jacob's legacy, and we have been developing something which we call WWJD. What would Jacob do? What would Jacob do? Jacob would have gone to DP headquarters to eulogize me as a friend. You all know that I love writing. These days I write a lot on Twitter. But I also keep a diary. I lost a lot of my diaries in 2004 when my luggage got lost on a plane. But let me read to you what I wrote in my diary on January 22nd. Many people say, when are you writing? When are you writing? It actually doesn't matter whether I write a book or not. My diaries tell the stories daily. And that's why I will have the last laugh, because I am keeping a record of everything that happens. So, Saturday, January 22nd, 2022, and I'm reading verbatim. This is what I wrote in my own handwriting. It is not something of today. I decided to take a day of rest. This was deliberate and not without effort. The life of a politician is somewhat akin to that of a clergyman. Weekends are the busiest. Sunday, which many take to be a day of rest, is actually the busiest. In Uganda, Sunday is the day that many have chosen to be the day suitable for burials. In late afternoon, my phone rang. It was Martin Ojara Mapenduzi, former Speaker of Gulu local government, and now the MP for Laibi Badege constituency in the city of Gulu. Mapenduzi asked me to hold the line after telling me that there was an emergency. This was 22nd January. He then put Chief Justice Owindolo online. The Chief Justice asked me whether I was in Kampala. When I told him I was in Kampala, he told me to put everything aside and rush to the home of National Assembly Speaker Jacob Oulanyah. I put on shoes without socks, grabbed a warm jacket, and took the steering wheel of my hardtop Land Cruiser and hightailed it to Muyenga, where Jacob lives. The Chief Justice was seated in the living room. The Deputy Speaker arrived almost at the same time as me. She was driving herself and wearing a tracksuit. Also present were the Minister for Economic Monitoring, Peter Ogwang, the Clerk to Parliament, Adolf Mwesige, the Director of Finance in Parliament, Patrick Kunobwa. We were told that the team of doctors were in the Speaker's bedroom attending to him because he was quite ill. Jacob has been in and out of hospital for the last 1 year. He has spent several weeks in various hospitals outside Uganda. He reportedly developed hernia, which was operated, but then some complications developed. Today, we were told that he had developed an acute infection of bacteria. We were seated at the veranda of the house. We were told that Dr. Christine Ondoa and Dr. Rem, the director of the Uganda Cancer Institute, had come down and wanted to brief the Deputy Speaker and the Chief Justice first before meeting the rest of us. The Chief Justice and Deputy Speaker went into the living room to be briefed. After about 15 minutes, they came back. We huddled with the doctors in the veranda like a soccer team in halftime, contemplating what strategy would deliver victory. After seeing Dr. Rem of the Cancer Institute, my heart skipped a beat. I feared that my friend Jacob could be battling cancer. Fortunately, there are advanced medical options that doctors can resort to. when detected early, cancer, even of the worst kind, can be controlled and even cured. After the briefing by the doctors, we went upstairs to see Jacob. He was dressed in a sports t-shirt and tracksuit pants. He was seated on a high-back chair and was having an intravenous drip injection. The doctor said he has not been eating well and needed to get some nutrients intravenously. His head was bowed, and he told us that he was in great pain. The Chief Justice and the Deputy Speaker assured him that as the head of Parliament, everything will be done to avail all the resources needed for his treatment in Uganda or abroad. The doctors agreed that they would move him to Mulago Hospital for better management. After he has been stabilized, then he may be flown outside Uganda. Adolf Mwesige, the clerk to Parliament, and I, who have known Jacob since 1988, encouraged him to accept that his condition, however painful, is temporary. It is a season, I told him. I assured him that he is a foremost flag bearer for those of us born in the 60s and 70s. He has a historical mission to accomplish as part of our generation, and he should not let his current condition interfere with what God has set him apart for. Adolf said when he was ill and had just undergone brain surgery, it was Jacob who called on him and encouraged him not to lose the will to live. When I was in the intensive care unit at IHK Hospital in 2015, it was Jacob who called and told me not to give up the fight for life. Today it was my turn to share words of encouragement with him. Indeed, when I collapsed in Gulu in 2014, it was Jacob who called every general in the UPDF, asking them to transport me in a military helicopter and bring me to Entebbe. It was Jacob who finally got the helicopter which was meant to take General Kayanja to Juba, South Sudan, to be diverted to bring a Nobert Mao who had collapsed, lying on a mattress on the floor of the helicopter, to Entebbe, and later to get transport to go to Nairobi. In Entebbe, it was our mutual friend, Robert Mwesigwa Rukari, who was waiting with another car and had booked a room for me to rest at Protea, Entebbe, and later provided me with the means to travel with Francis Gimara, former president of Uganda Law Society, as my nurse to Nairobi. Before I left, Dr. Orem told me that Jacob needs emergency medical treatment abroad. Jacob felt that he was not getting the best treatment, and this was leading to depression. More importantly, the doctors had said that he could not be transferred immediately to Mulago because Mulago is also full of infections. They had to keep him at home while the room in Mulago was being prepared. It is this mental burden that the CJ and the rest of us needed to deal with. Mental anxiety and worry can interfere with the body's efforts to heal itself. It puts a big discount on what medicine can do. This is what I wrote on the 22nd of January. Later, I learned that Jacob had been moved to Mulago Hospital. Then one day, he called me and he said, he used to call me Osu, it is a nickname. Said, I'm like a prisoner here. The president virtually had me arrested and brought to hospital. I cannot be visited by many people. Nobody can visit me unless they are on a special list. But I'm getting better, and soon I will go abroad. That was the last time we spoke with Jacob. Of course, he was taken to Seattle. And many of you know the story. You know how many of us got entangled in the war of words with those we called and continue to call night dancers, who were totally callous and unsympathetic, shouting outside the hospital room of a man fighting for his life. We prayed for him. And then, over 2 weeks ago, while I was coming from a beam, and I was now in Gulu, I got a message from the Chief Justice that he needed me to be in Pade, and we met in Pade. Then the Chief Justice told me he would be going to Seattle. So I told him, please don't go without informing me. I am going to buy a big get well soon card so that I run around so that well-wishers can sign and you take the card to Jacob in Seattle. But the very next day, while in Gulu, I got a call from the then Deputy Speaker telling me I should accompany her to Seattle because Jacob has demanded to see a few of us. She asked me whether I had a US visa, whether I was vaccinated, and she basically bundled me up to come and have a COVID test in order to travel. You've heard this before, but let me repeat it. We found Jacob alive. He opened his eyes and saw us. His face was very sad when he saw us. He didn't talk much. I only heard him call the Chief Justice's name in a very weak voice, Chigamoi. Tears were streaming from the corners of his eyes. It was as if he was saying goodbye to us. Of course, by that time we didn't know. The only thing Dr. Ruth Acheng had told us to prepare us was to say, the Jacob you are seeing is not the Jacob you know. He's very ill and he has lost a lot of weight. That's all. So on the first day, we remained very hopeful. The next day we went back to hospital. And then we met Dr. Hancock, his principal physician. You know, the white doctors are very blunt. Here in Uganda, they tell you gently, even if you are losing someone. The Muzungus just told us, Jacob is dying. Everybody was paralyzed. I looked at the Chief Justice, I looked at the then Deputy Speaker, she was just in tears. Jacob's brother was in the room. His head was bowed. And then he went on to explain to us what they wanted to do. The doctors have explained what they wanted to do. I don't need to repeat it. It's a new technology for cancer treatment, where you harvest blood cells from a patient, take the cells to the laboratory, and weaponize the blood cells, turn them into weapons to fight cancer. You put the same blood cells back in the body. And Seattle is the center of excellence. They receive patients from all over the world. And they have won 3 Nobel Prizes in medicine for their efforts. And they are partnering with the Uganda Cancer Institute. We thought it would be possible. And the doctor said, as a last resort, they thought they could harvest some cells from Jacob's sibling, particularly Francis, who was with us, in order to save Jacob. But the doctor told us that Jacob's body was in no condition to even receive that. The organs had failed. That is why I sent that tweet. I couldn't say much. I love talking. I am always talking. But I understand many of you saw the last 3 words, it is well, and then concluded that, you know, Nobert Mao must be saying something. Those who got it, you got it. It was simply my way of saying we have accepted that we are not coming back with Jacob. Every day Jacob would ask those attending to him, I want to go back home. Where's my passport? And they would show him his passport. Where's my air ticket? It is being processed. The doctor only gave us one assurance, that it was their duty to ensure that Jacob died as comfortably as possible. The day before we traveled, we had planned to go and say goodbye before we fly out. But in the night, we got the information that he had died. It was the Chief Justice who called me, and he instructed me that, I know you like tweeting a lot, don't say anything. The President has instructed everybody to wait until the family is fully informed. The father, the brother, the children. After that, the President will announce, and then the rest of you can say whatever you have to say. I just slept with my phone on my chest, monitoring the President's Twitter account. The moment I saw his announcement, then I also decided to write something. We wept for Jacob because of the potential he still had. We wept for Jacob because he kept so much of his pain secret. Many of us did not know what he was dealing with. Of course, we who went to school with him know that he has lived with a lot of pain. Those of us who were in Makerere on the 10th of December 1990, remember that day when we had called a General Assembly to actually call off our strike. Ironically, that is the day the military and police was heavily deployed at Freedom Square. Jacob, being the speaker, was in his red gown, so he was clearly identified. They descended on him and beat him very, very badly. He had to go for emergency surgery. They cut off his spleen, and he lived his life without a spleen. And the doctor in Seattle confirmed, he said many of his organs had evidence of trauma dating decades earlier. Jacob had to deal with all that. So when we say Jacob lived a life of courage, it was both physical courage and moral courage to take tough decisions that many of us may even fear to take. Jacob lived life and he loved life. I was a frequent visitor to his room in Makerere. Jacob was supposed to contest for guild presidency. He was then a hardline UPC. He told me he received a lot of threats from state agents, and he decided that it was better for him not to contest. I was interested in contesting, and Jacob offered me his full support. That was a defining moment, and it was in Makerere where we met our political twins, so to speak. We are all over. We are in every political party. The Honorable Robert Rukari is there. He was in UH. Up to now, I don't know whether he voted for me or he voted for Nobert Mao. And even Nobert Mao died without knowing who he had voted for. He insists that it is a secret ballot. But we have remained friends despite that. He's like family to us. He's like family to Jacob. Emmanuel Dombo of Northcote Hall was the guild president who came in after me with my full support. Adolf Mwesige was the candidate who wanted to be the Speaker of the Guild, and he contested with Jacob Oulanyah. And Jacob won. That Mitchell Hall had people like Felix Okoto Gong. I don't need to go through all the names, but we were many. Others are even in neighboring countries. General Joseph Nzabamwita was in my room. We were roommates. As Speaker, Jacob led us in hosting what we then called Africa Week. We used to do what was called a mock OAU, which is the predecessor of the African Union, where we invite so-called heads of states. Jacob was very conciliatory. When we were trying to allocate countries to certain individuals, he was very supportive that Nobo Mayombo should represent Muammar Gaddafi. There was also a debate as to whether RPF is a liberation organization or just a group of bandits. We had a tough debate, and people like me and Jacob were saying this should be recognized as a liberation organization. And when the time came to choose who should represent the RPF delegation, it was my roommate. At that time, he was called Joseph Kahanji. And the joke was, you look like General Kagame, who is leading the RPF. You come and speak for RPF. And he spoke with such passion. Later, when I met him in Kigali, I said, are you sure you were not an underground member of RPF, even when you were in Makerere? He laughed, which was in a way an admission. So, when I reached Makerere, as a student who had got the 2 A's, those days when you got 2 A's, you are given what they call a state scholarship, about 16,000 shillings, which was a lot of money. So I needed to go and buy a radio cassette. You know, as a villager, you need a radio cassette in your room. You need some plates. Most welcome, Right Honorable. I didn't know Kampala, so I asked Jacob whether he could escort me. Indeed, we walked to town and I bought some things. About 3 years ago, I recounted the story to Jacob, and Jacob said, by the way, I also didn't know Kampala well. Now, that should tell you one thing about Jacob. He was very confident. He was confident enough to lead me into a city he also didn't know well. And I trusted him completely. Jacob's deputy as Speaker was Kenneth Wanyoto, brother to the NRM's chair of the Women's League. Lydia's brother was the deputy to Jacob. Jacob always believed in procedure. For him, ends and means go together. When we wanted to declare a strike in Makerere, as Speaker, he insisted that we must take the motion to the Guild Representative Council, and if it passes, we must call a General Assembly, and then we can declare the strike. It was not like these strikes of these days of we go, way, something like that. Our motion was adopted, but the university had passed a resolution saying students cannot hold a General Assembly without permission of the Vice Chancellor. I went to Jacob's room on E Block and I said, what do we do, Mr. Speaker? If we request for permission, it will be denied. Do we defy? So I asked him, as Guild President, I'm asking you as Speaker, will you chair that General Assembly? And he said, yes, because our cause is just. At that time, we were opposing the government policy of structural adjustment program, which we then called stomach adjustment program. That policy was an austerity measure negotiated with IMF and the World Bank, which proposed reduction of government expenditure. It came with retrenchment, privatization of companies, later the UCBs, the cooperative bank, all those policies that led to that. It even affected the army. There was something called reduction in force. And that's how the president had to go into tricking the World Bank by introducing LDUs. Because he needed soldiers, but they could not be called soldiers. So that's what we were opposing. The policy also required reducing expenditure to higher institutions of learning in order to support primary schools and secondary schools. And we told the government, are you locking the children of the poor out of universities? That was the policy conflict we were having. It was not about food, it was not that we are tired of beans, because reducing expenditure to higher education meant that we were not going to have quality education. And I think we are having a problem with the quality of university education in Uganda today. I'm glad that the president of Uganda now admits that those who advised him to embrace that structural adjustment program fully were wrong, because there are some strategic companies that shouldn't have been sold. That's what we were fighting for with Jacob. So, he called the General Assembly. There were radio announcements threatening us, but we went ahead and addressed the General Assembly, and we declared the strike, which was a lecture boycott. The students were not unanimous. There were students who opposed the idea of the strike. But democracy is about a majority. So the majority had to have its way. Unfortunately, it ended badly. Jacob and I and a number of other students were then targeted for expulsion for violating a statutory instrument of the University Council. We ran to Justice Owindolo. He was then a practicing advocate sitting at this hotel near Sheraton. He told us, bring that regulation. When he looked at the regulation, he realized that that regulation did not have the force of law, so we could not be expelled on account of violating a law which was not a law. Because the University Act required that that regulation should have been tabled before Parliament, and it was not tabled. So we really breathed. It was Justice Platt chairing the Commission of Inquiry. When we took that argument to him, he looked at us and said, that's very clever. Which lawyer told you that? And we told him. As you know, Jacob later went back to study law to continue fighting for human rights and justice. Jacob was my partner in the law firm, together with the late Charles Owor, who was an election commissioner. In many ways, Jacob became a true brother to some of us. Let me conclude by sharing Jacob's legacy. Fortunately, I am reading things that I already wrote. So I'm not just speaking to make impression. This is based on something I wrote on May 25th, 2021. And I wrote the following, because this will capture the legacy. The MPs have chosen a new team to lead the institution of Parliament. We congratulate the new Speaker, the Right Honorable Jacob Oulanyah, and the new Deputy Speaker, the Right Honorable Anita Among. I've had the chance to speak to them and conveyed my congratulations. I also wanted to reach the former Speaker, but her phone was off. I therefore passed on a message through her personal assistant I want to thank the Right Honorable Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga for her leadership of Parliament over the years. In her tenure, she redefined the institution of Parliament and gave it a stronger voice for the people, capable of taking a stand against many instances of executive overreach, especially in monetary affairs. Her networking skills has improved the image of our Parliament worldwide and made Uganda's Parliament a model that many democracies look up to and emulate. Given her knowledge and experience, she still has a lot to offer the people of Uganda and the world. We offer her our appreciation and prayers. We have very high expectations of the new leadership of Parliament. We expect them to have hard skills and soft skills. The hard skills are the mastery of the roles, rules, and traditions of Parliament and how to apply them. The soft skills are basically how to get things done with minimum friction. And that is Jacob's legacy. Getting things done with minimum friction. Some of the most important soft skills are how to make all members feel valued, how to build consensus, restraint in the use of the powers conferred on the office, ability to control meetings so they don't become unproductive, calmness and control over one's temper and emotions, impartiality and objectivity, sensitivity to the feelings of members, approachability, tact, timekeeping, keeping a constructive engagement with the other branches of government, ability and willingness to delegate, ability to network nationally and internationally, commitment to the skills development of members and staff. This is particularly important given that many members are new and young. Ability to respect confidences. I have to emphasize this because when you are in a high office, you get a lot of secrets. That is why LC5 chairpersons take the oath of secrecy. Members of Parliament don't take the oath of secrecy. This became important to me when I was in the frontline district of Gulu. Things were happening, and I remember one time having a conversation with the president about a rather sensitive matter. And he said, I know you are in opposition, but you must remember you took the oath of secrecy. If you say this on radio, you will be arrested. Unfortunately, around the president is where most of the leakages occur. These days, before cabinet members have reached Kampala, their minutes are already on Twitter. I want to call upon the National Vice Chairman of the NRM. These leakages are going to cause us problems. Before even the president has made the list of RDCs public, the public already has it. A state cannot function like that. And therefore, confidences are important, but more important is the ability to get things done, namely to ensure that decisions are made in a timely manner according to the rules. Some of the most important attributes are consensus building. Finally, Jacob's legacy should be to move us towards a new culture of national consensus and responsible citizenry. Consensus building is an essential part of nation building. All parties have radical wings. Even NRM has extreme radical wings. Even DP has extreme radical wings. But Uganda needs a broad center. If we are to have a successful transition, or even if there are problems, if we are to have the capacity to manage those problems, we need a broad center. There should be an ability to cooperate for the larger good of the nation. That will be the cornerstone of a successful transition. Let the legacy of Jacob move us to denounce the politics of unwarranted confrontation and negativism. We believe that in a multi-party democracy like ours, constructive dialogue, consultation, and cooperation between the ruling and opposition parties is not only desirable but essential. The other day I saw one of the members of the official opposition party in parliament very happily engaged and hugging the newly elected speaker, and he was promptly denounced by members of his party that he is a traitor. How can you hug your tormentor? That kind of politics has got to be contained. It has become all the more necessary since several major national issues confronting Uganda today cannot be effectively addressed without evolving a broad platform of national consensus. Some of the issues where such a national consensus is most urgently called for are constitutional and electoral reforms, the relations between the central government and the building blocks that make Uganda, population policy, empowerment of young people. Why is it that it is in Uganda where a young graduate on his graduation day promptly announces that he is the next MP of the constituency? Who are going to design the apps? Who are going to be the young innovators of Uganda if politics is the only career? It is important that we develop a policy that will keep the youth busy innovating for the country. We need consensus on border disputes, environmental protection, institutional guarantees for the welfare of vulnerable people. Now, as president of DP, and as I salute Jacob Oulanyah, in the compound of the party, which he served faithfully and gratefully, there are many people who have been lifted up by this party. They have not been grateful. One thing I know about Jacob, he always expressed gratitude. Gratitude is not something which everybody finds. Even in the Bible, Jesus healed 10 blind people. Only one came to say thank you. Everybody wants to feel entitled rather than grateful. I want to testify. From the moment Jacob left his UPC party, he never looked back. He loved Uganda, of course, but he was fully committed to his party. And if there is any of you who may have had misgivings as to his loyalty, talk to me, because we had those difficult conversations. I was there when he received his membership card at night. Yes, it was Honorable Chizige who managed that process. I don't know whether he is here. One day he will have to tell you the story. As a final salute, we want to pledge as DP, we shall not practice political untouchability vis-a-vis any party. We will always talk to any party. 2, in all issues of national importance where a national consensus is needed, we shall adopt a policy of dialogue and consultation with other parties. Through the platform of IPOD, we shall continue to raise important issues. We may not have the numbers, but what we lack in numbers, we have in ideas. We are therefore grateful that when we had the last IPOD summit, we appealed directly to the president to release the young people, many of whom had been arrested in the course of the elections. And the president ordered the immediate release of over 60 people who were in prison. Of course, we were not thanked. We were insulted by the mother party of those people. 3, we commit to building a consultative mechanism and procedures. This consultative mechanism is important both to the NRM and to the opposition. Lastly, We shall actively seek the views, suggestions, and the participation of citizens and organizations outside the sphere of politics. An example is the issue of bail. You all know how that issue was about to divide the country. Many people were attacking the president instead of the idea or the policy. What we did as DP was to defend judicial discretion. If you want to tie the hands of judges, then what's the job of judges? We recommended that the right to bail is part of the right to a fair trial, which is an entrenched right in the Constitution of Uganda. We even threatened the referendum, and the Electoral Commission had cleared us. But we didn't leave all options closed. We proposed that the Chief Justice could issue practice directions to guide judicial officers to take into account the victim's views before granting bail in capital offenses cases. We are happy that the Chief Justice has issued draft practice directions, and the threat to amend the Constitution to tie the hands of judges has been abandoned. That's what we believe in as a DP. We could have also gone on TVs and radios to attack your national chairman and president of Uganda, to speak all sorts of things, but we thought that engaging constructively will be more fruitful. Through that, we will be able to achieve more. Finally, I want to thank you for this opportunity. On my maiden visit, Right Honorable Secretary General, whenever invited, I will come. But I'll not come to stay. God bless you.
What are you doing?